Hey everyone, I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and this is On the Block, powered by Cryptoroof, where we talk with the real estate wheelers and dealers to bring you the latest news from the block. Today, I'm glad to be joined by Dean Ofer, Acquisition Associate for Landmark Dividend. Dean, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Yonah.
Well, first off, I think we have a really interesting interview here today because you work for Landmark Dividend, which, let's say, is a very niche and unique area of real estate that I think that most people don't really think about when they think about real estate. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely, Yonah. So primarily when people are thinking about real estate, they're thinking about residential, office, or industrial brick and mortar assets. But what my company does in this bigger real estate market is we identify a niche in infrastructure assets for billboard, telecommunications, and renewable energy real estate assets throughout the US. And that's what we specialize in, and those are exclusively the assets we're purchasing across the country of all deal sizes.
Yeah, so I found that very interesting because when you walk around New York City, you're seeing skyscrapers, you're looking at the buildings, but not many people notice those antennas up on top or even think about kind of how those deals get made. So, when it comes to those antennas, how does that work real estate wise or, deal wise? Are you leasing out, the abilities on that antenna? Are you leasing out space on that antenna?
So we're purchasing the rights to the rental income streams for those assets. Similarly to the way we buy triple net leases or triple net leased real estate assets, whether it's a Dunkin' Donuts, a CVS, or a Walgreens, or Chase Bank, or any other individual retail asset that has strong cash flow, where the tenant is responsible for paying all of the expenses, all of the taxes, where all of that income is triple net. We are essentially purchasing the same thing for what you said, for those rooftop antennas, cell towers, billboards, and solar farms throughout the country.
Mm-hmm. Now, especially now with a lot of the, networks, Verizon, AT&T, they're rolling out their new 5G networks. And something that's unique to 5G is that it's very fast, but it doesn't have much range. So there really is a need for, these antennas that have to be popping up, across our cities today. Is this a growing sector of real estate now, this kind of antenna space leasing?
That's a great question. It's a very fast growing sector, especially within the past decade since smartphones have been rolled out. Most of our streaming and our data and our information we're extracting is primarily being used from our iPhone and not necessarily in an enclosed space with Wi-Fi connection. So there's a growing need for carriers, for the strong carriers, to grow their broadband networks in urban, secondary, and tertiary markets across the country. With that being said, 5G rollout is necessary for us as a country, for the US to grow its own network, especially against other competing countries with their own 5G networks, such as China. And all of the carriers are being very aggressive in recent years and more so in the future in expanding their broadband networks and signing strategic partnerships with landlords, with municipalities across the country to implement their small cell technology. Because moving forward, the majority of new developments are going to be small cell networks on municipal infrastructure. Think antennas on a traffic light, on a city building, on city infrastructure across the nation.
Mm-hmm. So these are really, these are deals, like you said, these are kind of, dealing with the municipalities. These are government properties. Does that change how the deals have to be structured or even how you as an agent kind of deal with the government there?
We certainly need to structure our purchase and sale agreement to accommodate the entity we're purchasing the asset from, whether that being a for-profit real estate investment company or a local municipality. Each organization has their own regulations and their own legal counsel they receive advice from. So we try to tailor our agreements to accommodate any concerns which our clients on the other end have pertaining to any transaction.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine, or I could only imagine, is dealing with, municipalities, especially when you're dealing with kind of government entities. Is it more of a headache, or does the paperwork kind of seem to fly quicker than usual?
I think dealing with a municipality, the paperwork and the due diligence processes are often longer than the average real estate transaction, given the amount of stakeholders and the amount of representatives who want to be involved in the loop at every part of the closing process. Meaning, if I'm dealing with a municipality, I'm often working with the finance committee, the legal counsel, the board of directors, and ensuring that each one of those stakeholders' needs are being met during every stage of the due diligence process. So dealing with municipalities, the closing processes can often take longer, but we are structuring win-win transactions to provide value and accommodate to the needs of all our clientele.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure that one of the benefits, and especially like times like this, when, doing deals that are dealing with kind of more stable entities like government entities, they're not going to miss their payments. Especially that's very relevant today during COVID-19, which has really shaken up the real estate market. Tenants are struggling to pay landlords are struggling to pay mortgages. How, in your view, how has COVID-19 affected your niche of the industry?
Well, I think it's actually grown our piece of the industry because there are many landlords far and wide who need capital, whether it's to pay down debt, it's for a possible reinvestment opportunity, or it's to put back into their own business. And many of our clients right now are not necessarily liquid. They're not looking to dispose of their traditional real estate assets at 70 cents on the dollar, given this COVID-19 environment. And our price points for these triple net assets, for cell towers, for billboards, for that infrastructure has stayed steady over time, given the fact that interest rate environment has gone down in the past 3 to 6 months, and our capital costs as a publicly traded real estate investment entity is at historic lows right now, meaning our price points and the amounts of value we can provide for our clientele is at historic highs for our company. So given those two pieces of information, we've actually seen a larger volume of transactions in all types of markets in the past 3 to 6 months.
Mm. Now you've mentioned that you guys also deal with solar energy, solar farms, as well as wind farms. I mean, this is like really the cutting edge, let's say, of real estate. These are sectors that just didn't exist 10 years back, 2 decades back. Do you guys find it challenging kind of, paving the way in these new sectors that kind of didn't exist 25 years ago?
Absolutely. The federal government has passed a number of incentives just in the last 10, 15 years, making the transition to clean energy, to energy that's dependent on wind and solar energy. And those projects are only going to increase in number over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's a big opportunity in today's marketplace.
Mm-hmm. In a similar vein, something that really didn't exist, as an entity, and definitely not a real estate entity, is data centers. I know you guys deal also with these. I mean, data centers are usually require a large space. And these are popping up everywhere, as our world becomes more digital, especially in COVID-19. How does that work as a real estate entity? Because it kind of needs to be outside of the city to have the space, but also close to the city to have to be close to the consumer. How has the data center, real estate market changed, grown in recent years?
That's a great question. It's grown considerably in recent years with big tech companies, and all companies for that matter, moving to cloud-based services. You have Google, Amazon, Facebook offering their cloud services to not only other big Fortune 500 companies, but to middle market companies moving to store their hard drives on the cloud. And that's a big market segment. We actually just closed a data center transaction a couple months ago in Phoenix, Arizona for a 72 million PayPal data center.
Wow. Congratulations on that deal.
Thank you.
Now, data centers, solar energy, that's not the only new and emerging technology that you actually are a part of, but you yourself personally, you actually have interest and maybe own some cryptocurrency as well. Tell me how you got involved with cryptocurrencies.
Oh, so now we're making the transition to blockchain. Very nice. So I've owned several cryptocurrency tokens over the past couple of years. I started getting into the space after the 2018, the late 2017 bubble, which ended up turning into a crash, and the entire market correcting itself, going from roughly 500 billion, 600 billion in market cap for the entire cryptocurrency world down to 150 billion. And I saw that Bitcoin, Ethereum, as well as other emerging tokens, the price points were interesting enough for myself to get involved, to diversify my assets. I'm obviously a young person. I'm a millennial. I see the value in these digital tokens and having decentralized platforms to move value across time without the traditional legacy intermediary verifying the transaction. And I think that's what the industry is trying to tackle. It's tackling the middleman, that financial intermediary such as the legacy banking system, to allow two individuals who don't even know each other to move value across time instantly. And that's the use cases that this is looking to solve. And it's something that's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Now someone who works in and is familiar with the real estate industry, who also is very interested in cryptocurrencies and blockchain as well. Are there any similarities you see between them?
They're both scarce assets, for one. If we can use Bitcoin as an example, there's only a fixed number of real estate lands in a market such as New York City. There's only certain amounts of land that can be bought. There are only a certain amount of residential units and commercial units available within this one big city. And I think the same holds true for Bitcoin. There is currently only 18 million Bitcoin in circulation, with a fixed supply of only 21 million after the last Bitcoiner mines in 100 years from now. Meaning it's a very scarce asset, and there's only a small number of new Bitcoin being minted into circulation each day, each hour, each year, which carries a lot of value, especially in this environment where the Federal Reserve passed historic quantitative easing in a 7-week stretch, printing nearly $7 trillion out of thin air in a 6-week time frame. And that's something that's unprecedented, which we've never seen. And if you look at the current banking system throughout the entire world, central bank in the US and central banks across the world, they're printing money in order to stimulate their own economies, devaluing their government issued currencies. And as a hedge, I think every person should be cognizant of what's going on across the world landscape to protect their assets into something which is outside the realm of government devaluation.
Now, for so long, the traditional financial system was kind of unchallenged, working the same way, going hundreds of years back. And I think that cryptocurrencies is actually starting to challenge that status quo a little bit. Do you see in the real estate field, which also has historically kind of worked the same way, do you see anything kind of coming to disrupt? Do you feel a change happening at all in the real estate field?
Absolutely. I think prior to 10 years ago, most owners of buildings were single entities, whether they're real estate investment companies, whether they're family trust, or so on and so forth. What we've seen in the past 5 to 8 years has been the growth of real estate crowdfunding, which makes the real estate asset class more liquid. And I think with the implementation of cryptocurrency and tokens in the future, that's going to make investors, it's going to provide them the ability to move in and out of certain real estate investments in a much more frictionless manner.
Well, definitely.
There are going to be tokens which tackle this the problem and solve it within the next 5 to 8 years. Do I know for certain what that's going to be, what token, what technology? No, I don't. But I do think that there will be a platform which solves this problem. We're still in the infancy stages of cryptocurrency. Me personally, I don't like using the term cryptocurrency because most of these projects, 90% of them are all scams right now. So just to focus on Bitcoin, Ethereum, decentralized finance, I think those are projects I'm much more comfortable talking about because there's still so much development which needs to take place in the space to grow effectively, to become a $1 trillion market in the coming years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you mentioned DeFi, and you mentioned how this kind of tokenization could open the doors to more liquidity in the market, but not only that, but also make it more accessible. Once you're able to split the investment amongst a wider group of people, it lowers the barrier for entry into investing in real estate, and I think that opens up the doors to new investors, people who never even thought they could invest in real estate before, and I think that's very exciting. But we understand, clearly me and you, we see the promise that these new technologies like blockchain, and digital money, Bitcoin, Ethereum are bringing to the table, across the board, and especially real estate. But many people are still quite skeptical. Do you think it's because they don't understand exactly what this technology is and how it works? They haven't been exposed to it? What is it about you that makes you less skeptical of this emerging technology?
Well, most early adopters of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency have been of the younger generation who understand the need for a digital currency and for the problems which the legacy banking system already have. Most of the money in America are being held by baby boomers who don't understand blockchain technology, who don't understand the problems that legacy banks are not solving. And that's only going to change with slow adoption over time. To this point, Bitcoin was only created about 10 years ago as a result of the financial crisis, as an alternative means to give individuals their own ability to act as their own bank, because the banking system, there was skepticism. You couldn't trust that legacy banking system. They failed the clients which they were meant to protect in 2009. So there's going to be a slow growth of adoption for these scarce digital assets in the next 5 to 10 years. And you see many of the big institutions right now are slowly moving into adoption. You have institutional resources through Grayscale, through Gemini, providing custodial solutions, providing investment vehicles that meet all of today's government regulations imposed by the US government for their institutional investors, and that's only going to grow moving forward. It's a slow adoption process, but you have some of the biggest names in finance getting behind this technology who are looking to invest a small sliver of their net worth into these assets to hedge into this new asset class just started 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's very exciting. Like you mentioned, it's all brand new. But I really appreciate you taking the time, Dean, to kind of peel back, the fold and let us see what it's like in the very interesting niche that you guys work with at Landmark Dividend, as well as giving us your take on blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies. I appreciate you sitting with me today. And for all you viewers at home, I'm Yonah Hochhauser with On the Block. Thanks for watching.